I always thought family was supposed to have your back, but my family, they never did. And now, 10 years later, they're begging for a second chance, right before my wedding. The timing, too perfect, but the reason behind it, I think it's all about the money. Let me explain how this went down. It all started when I turned 18. The day I turned 18, I packed my bags, left my house, and never looked back. And I know that might sound dramatic, but when you've been pushed around your entire life, being forced to endure bullying and neglect from the people who are supposed to love you, you don't stick around for that. You leave fast. It wasn't always like this. Growing up, I had an older brother who made my life hell. And when I say hell, I mean it. The guy was 5 years older than me, bigger, stronger, and he had a thing for making my life miserable. It started small teasing, annoying pranks, but it quickly escalated. He'd make fun of my grades, my looks, everything. At first, I tried to brush it off. He's your brother, they'd say. That's just what brothers do. Yeah, well, my brother took it to a whole new level. It wasn't just jokes, it was cruelty. He'd make me the laughing stock at school, humiliate me in front of friends, and then laugh it off like it was all fun and games. And my parents, they turned a blind eye. Every time I'd go to them, they'd tell me I was being too sensitive. Boys will be boys, they'd say. I didn't get it. If this was what family was supposed to be, I was done with it. By the time I hit high school, it wasn't just emotional bullying, it became physical. And that's when I knew my parents weren't going to protect me. They didn't care. They didn't even ask what happened when we'd fight. They just assumed I was the one starting it because I was too weak to stand up for myself. Then one day, it got worse. A massive fight broke out between me and my brother. It was bad. I was hurt. And when my parents came in, they just yelled at me. They never asked about the fight. They didn't care that I was hurt. They just scolded me for picking a fight with someone who was much bigger and stronger than me. That was the final straw. So, I left. On my 18th birthday, I walked out the door with nothing but my clothes and a couple of bags. I didn't even look back. I went straight to my grandparents. They lived just a few blocks away, and when I walked in, I told them everything. I was terrified. I was exhausted from the years of torment, but my grandparents, they were furious. They couldn't believe what had been going on. They welcomed me with open arms and made it clear that I never had to go back. And that was it. I cut off all contact with my family. It wasn't just a physical move, it was emotional too. My parents and brother made their choice years ago, and I was done. But here's where things take a turn. It wasn't just me leaving. My grandparents stepped up. They paid for my college, let me stay with them while I got on my feet. And most importantly, they loved me when my own family couldn't be bothered. 4 years, my parents and brother tried to reach out through my grandparents, trying to patch things up, but I wasn't having it. They weren't sorry. If they really cared, they would have apologized a long time ago. But no, they were stubborn. They refused to admit their mistakes. And for me, that was the end of it. I moved on. I built my life. And for the most part, it was peaceful. Until recently. Now, here I am, getting married in a few days. And out of nowhere, my parents and brother have reached out. They want a fresh start. They want to make amends before my wedding. This, right after my grandparents changed their will. I had no idea what was going on at first, but my grandparents told me everything. Apparently, a couple of weeks ago, they had spoken to a lawyer and changed their will. The inheritance, which was supposed to be split between my dad, brother, and me, is now almost entirely mine. After everything that had gone down between my family and them, my grandparents decided to leave the majority of their estate to me, and they made sure my parents knew about it. My family wasn't happy. They couldn't care less about me or my life. All they cared about was the inheritance. That's when I received the email from them, asking for forgiveness. It was pathetic. They tried to make it sound like they genuinely wanted to heal the relationship, but I knew better. It was all about the money. And that's when I wrote back. I told them exactly what I thought of their fresh start, and how they were only coming to me now because of the inheritance. I let them have it. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me again. I called them out for what they were: desperate, money-hungry people who hadn't cared about me for a decade. And that's when my fiancée made a comment that I couldn't ignore. She told me I was being petty. that maybe I should have just ignored them and let it go. And I'll be honest, it made me pause. Was I being petty? I didn't reply to them, but I kept thinking about it, and I realized I probably was. But you know what? I didn't care. They had their chance, and they blew it. They made their bed, and now they could lie in it. But the real question is, what do I do now? Do I keep ignoring them, or should I just let it go and get on with my life? So, I decided to keep my distance and not engage further. But then, a few days later, I got another email from my parents. This one was different. It was more desperate. They apologized, claiming they had finally realized how wrong they had been all those years. Suddenly, after a decade of silence, they were sorry. They said they had been reflecting on everything and wanted to make things right, starting with me. But here's the thing, I didn't buy it. Not for a second. If they really cared, they wouldn't have waited this long. I knew the second they heard about the world change. That was when they decided to get their act together. They didn't give a damn about me, they just wanted to be in my life for the inheritance. And as much as I wanted to move on, I couldn't let that go. So, I did what I had to do. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked them everywhere. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur. But every time I checked my email or thought about my family, it felt like I was letting them have control over my emotions again. I wasn't going to let them ruin my big day. My fiancée and I were on the same page. She knew what was going on, and we both agreed that I shouldn't let them disrupt our lives any more than they already had. But it didn't stop there. Oh no, my family wasn't done yet. A couple of days before the wedding, I got a call from my grandparents. They told me my parents had shown up at their place. They had come over, demanding my address, so they could apologize in person before the wedding. They wanted to be there for me, they said, to make everything right. I couldn't believe it. These people had treated me like crap for so long, and now, at the most important moment of my life, they were trying to insert themselves. My grandparents, understandably, were pissed. They told them flat out, "You've had 10 years to make things right. If he wants to talk to you, he will. But not now, not like this." And still, my parents wouldn't let it go. They insisted on knowing where the wedding was going to be. I'm sure you can guess why, so they could show up, try to force their way in, and pretend like everything was fine. That's when my grandparents called me and told me about the confrontation. They were about to call the cops on my parents for trespassing. In the end, my parents backed down temporarily. But it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The day before the wedding, I got yet another email. This time, it wasn't just an apology. No, this email was more about them begging me for a fresh start on my wedding day. They still wanted to know the venue, so they could show up. It was beyond ridiculous. They were desperate, and I just couldn't take it anymore. At this point, I was done. I deleted the email, blocked their new address, and went about my business. But I did have one concern. I was worried they might somehow show up at the wedding. So, I had to take action. I talked to my fiancée, and we decided to tighten security at the venue just in case. I didn't want any drama on our special day, and I wasn't going to let them ruin it. But the worst part of all this, they didn't just stop there. A few days after the wedding, I checked my inbox. Guess what I found? 10 emails. All the same, apologies, more begging, the same empty words, just like before. It was pathetic. They couldn't even respect my boundaries. They just kept on and on about how sorry they were, how they wanted to be part of my life, and how they hoped I'd forgive them. But they weren't apologizing because they cared about me. They were apologizing because they wanted something. They wanted access to the inheritance. I didn't bother reading them. I deleted them, blocked the email, and went on with my life. I wasn't going to let them have control over me anymore. But then, my grandparents called me again. They told me that my dad had shown up at their place, demanding to speak with me. I knew this was coming. He probably wanted to try and manipulate me into giving him the inheritance or something. So, I went over to my grandparents' house to deal with it once and for all. My dad opened the door and tried to play the "I'm sorry, I misunderstood everything" card. He even went so far as to say that I was the son he always wanted, and my brother had turned out to be a total loser. It felt like a slap in the face, because once again, he was trying to pit me against my brother to make me feel special. But it didn't work. I wasn't falling for it. I told him straight up. I knew what this was about. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about family. It was about money. And I wasn't going to let them use me for it. I told him to stop bothering me, to stop manipulating my grandparents, and to stop pretending like they were the victims here. I was done. My dad's face turned red. His ego couldn't handle it. He started screaming at me, accusing me of somehow manipulating my grandparents into changing their will. It was absurd. He stormed off, promising me that I wouldn't have the inheritance for long, and that he'd take me to court if he had to. I wasn't worried. The will was ironclad. They couldn't do anything about it. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. But here's the thing, after all of this, after years of torment, I felt nothing but relief. Relief that I finally stood up for myself. Relief that I was done with the drama. My grandparents, who had always been there for me, told me they were glad I finally confronted my father and put an end to it. They had been dreading this moment, but they were proud of me. My wife was by my side, supporting me through everything, and I knew that's all I really needed. So, we moved on, and honestly, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. They weren't worth my time, my energy, or my thoughts anymore. The wedding was perfect. My life is mine now, and I'm not going to let anyone, especially my toxic family, take that away from me. And here's the thing, I'll never forget what they did, but I also won't let it control me anymore. I'm free. My family might have been the worst, but my grandparents, my wife, and the people who truly care about me, that's my family now. That's what matters. So, Reddit, AITA for not giving my family the fresh start they've been begging for and standing my ground after all these years.